Hey, what's happening, everybody? Thank you for checking out the Brain Drain podcast, and I'm your host, Connor McCann. A couple days ago, I put out a new episode of my Topics Off the Top series, and this is a series where I just kind of literally take some topics off the top of my head and just speak on them. And while I like doing the documentaries that I do, the thought out, well-researched things that I like to speak on, I really like just coming off the top of the head and just discussing certain topics. For those of you guys familiar with my channel, you guys know that I put out a video about being a tagger and graffiti in San Francisco in the 1990s. I got involved at a pretty early age, and I just felt like, even after doing that video, it's like a 40-minute video, it's audio only. If you haven't checked it out yet, I would say go check it out. But I felt like there were still some other things to discuss. More specifically, I feel like, one, I'll just say that time is a golden era for San Francisco graffiti. And we had some of the most talented graffiti artists, in my opinion, ever, active in the city, throwing up, doing pieces, tagging, doing hand styles. We had guys like Twist, Reminisce. We had Saber from AWR, MSK from down in LA. We had Cycle. We had the ICP crew, Chief, Butter, like guys I've spoken on previously, women I've spoken on previously, were all very active during this time. And growing up where I did, I grew up on Cortlandt and Mission in San Francisco, in Bernal Heights, right on the border of the Mission District. Any day I was going to school, I could see a fresh piece, a new something, even just little stickers on the bus. I could see those from these great artists. And there's a documentary about that time period called Piece by Piece. That's just about San Francisco graffiti during its golden era. And I very much recommend checking it out. However, I will say there's one end of this graffiti equation that maybe hasn't been spoken on too much. And that is the life and the daily goings on of a bus hopper. And who better to speak on bus hopping than a bus hopper themselves? So let's get into it. So just for those that don't know, bus hopping is the act of going from bus to bus within the city of San Francisco and hitting up and tagging. And for those of us that were children, obviously, if you're 11, 12 years old like I was when I started tagging, you don't have a license. My family didn't even have a car at the time. And even if we did have a car, there was no way in hell my mom was just gonna, roll around and be like, all right, Connor, jump out and hit up real quick. Not happening. Not happening at all. We got around on the bus. For those outside the city, San Francisco does a lot of things wrong, does a lot of things right. And Muni, the bus system that we have, I believe it's just called the MTA now. In those days, it was Muni. Was one of those things that was right and wrong at the same time. The right end of it is you could get on a bus in the city and really be anywhere within the city within like an hour. And you could get on one bus going in one direction, hop that bus, get off it, go in a complete opposite direction. I had a friend that's just how he used to kill time. He'd cut school and he'd ride the 43 from Geary and Masonic all the way to Balboa Park and then just get on the 43 going back the other way. Sometimes with even the same driver, and the guy to be looking at him like, what the f*** are you doing? Like, don't you got somewhere to go? Don't you have a class to be in or something like that? As kids in the city, as city kids, we were just outside. And from a very early age, I was outside and I was out hopping buses. Even when I wasn't tagging, I was still moving around like that, just exploring. And for 35 cents in those days, you could end up anywhere. You can go to the ballpark. That would be Candlestick Park, AT&T Park, or whatever the fuck it's called now. Didn't exist yet, but Candlestick was the place to go to see the Giants and the 49ers. You can go to Golden Gate Park. You can go out to the beach. Didn't take that long. So bus hopping is the act of just going and hopping bus to bus in the hopes of just getting up. And I'll just very, very briefly speak on my introduction to graffiti because I've kind of thought about it some more since I put out that episode. And I did an episode about my first brush with death. So I ended up getting my face cut open, my arm cut open. I took 100 stitches at the age of 12 years old, and I almost died in the process. It just is what it is. I almost lost my life that day. And I had something positive going on in my life. At that time, I was playing baseball. I played baseball. I practiced over at Horace Mann Middle School. I played for the Jamestown team under Zach Rollins. Shout out to Zach. That was like the only positive thing I had going on at that time. I was lightweight, still involved in martial arts. I was phasing myself out of that. I'll talk about that at some other time. But when I got injured, I was on the shelf for a couple months. And I kind of realized that any of these times where I had something like this happen, some kind of tragedy, some kind of messed up thing happen, I would end up with a lot of free time, and I end up just back wandering the streets, hanging out with my buddies, doing whatever. And I got involved in tagging the same way. I couldn't practice any kind of sports after my injury for a couple of months. I had nothing but time. I was a broke-ass little kid. I didn't want to be inside the house. I just wanted to be out and about. We didn't have computers. The internet was kind of starting to pop off for just regular people. And we didn't even have access to that at that time. I think I might have had some video games, and I had a whole bunch of other going on. I just wanted to be outside. A guy I was really cool with was already tagging. And like I said, with no ability to play sports, no ability to do anything really constructive, because I'm still healing up, I got cut up really bad. I had nothing but time to tag. When tagging was brought to me, when I was introduced to it, I jumped into it wholeheartedly. I had nothing else going on. And I feel like a lot of people getting involved in things like tagging, sadly, a lot of things like gangbanging, it's a similar situation. Home life isn't so great. Not a lot of prospects to do anything. Maybe not even the money to do anything. And a lot of people just out on their own, looking for something to do, looking for somewhere to be, looking to be kind of accepted by somebody. They end up getting involved in graffiti. That was my story. Not long after that, I hit up for the first time. I started bus hopping. So when we would go tag, me, my crew of people, I tagged with a lot of guys that I'd actually known since childhood. I went to school at Unipro Sarah Elementary School, right next to the Holly Courts projects, and those are the guys I ended up tagging with. I'll save names. I don't know who wants to be out there. There's a couple people now that I'm still in contact with from those times that I was tagging. Shout out to them. I don't know if they want their names out there, so we'll just let everybody do their own thing, come out and say what they did in their own way. But I started getting involved in that, and the primary time that I would tag would be to and from school. Every single day, I would be taking either the J Church, I take the 24, I take the 14, the 49. Sometimes I would take the 67. Sometimes I might take the 48 or something like that, just because you would do stupid stuff like take the 24 from, say, Market Station on Castro, get off at 24th, take the 48 down, and take the 14 back towards Cortland. I'm only doing stupid stuff like that. Like, that adds a gang of time. And there's dangers in doing stuff like that. It adds a lot of unnecessary everything to your experience of riding the damn bus in the city, which could be, even without going out and searching out these experiences, some pretty perilous on its own. I'm adding all that because it's extra opportunities to hit up. But in doing this, even just that, the bus itself, the canvas of the bus, it almost had like its own point system for tagging. And I'll preface this by saying, those folks that are in that documentary, piece by piece, they're the elite of the tagging world. People like us, kids, bus hoppers, will be considered toys. And for someone to call me a bus hopper now, they might feel like they're being respectful, which they are, because they could just say, oh, you're a toy, that's what's up. That's what I was. We had our own world, and we had almost our own point system for where you would hit up on the bus. So, just starting at the lowest point, we're going to discuss the anatomy of a Muni Bus here. Tagging on the seats was boo-boo. No good. Like, you're tagging on the seats, that's very easy to do. You sit right behind somebody else. You know, the only seat that you can't hit up behind is the back seat of the bus. And, you know, anytime we get on the bus, sometimes we sneak on. Sometimes we pay our fare or do whatever, pass a fast pass, pretend you're putting it in your pocket, hand it to the next person. Do stuff like that. We go right to the back of the bus. Tagging on the seat, nobody's going to see you. And you can use something like a pilot marker that will stink up the bus. People are going to know somebody's tagging. They might not know, you know, who's doing what where. And that's almost like part of the allure, part of the fun, is doing these things in the most kind of dangerous setting. So if you're a type of dude that's just tagging on the back of a seat, no props. No props at all. Kind of a safer way to tag and still get your name up and still be recognized would be to use something that was known as a scriber, like a diamond tip etcher. One way you could do it is you could just put your arm up against a window and just kind of slowly over time. It might take you 20 or 30 minutes to hit your name up. those buses in the Mission District are passing through Noe Valley, stopping at every stop. So people are not necessarily getting off. It's just more people cramming on, more kids going to school. For people in other parts of the country, you guys got to understand, we're kids riding public transport. We're not on a school bus. We're there with adults. We're there with people that are on drugs, people with severe mental health issues. Like, I've seen it all in the buses in the city. I've talked about that before. Sadly, people gangbanging on each other. Those situations turning potentially ugly, if not outright ugly. People getting jumped, people getting robbed. We're just kids. And we have to acclimatize ourselves to that. So not only have we seen all these things, experienced some of these things, done some of these things, they become so normal that on top of it, we're breaking the law while all this other shit's going on. So in hitting up a scribe, you got 20 or 30 minutes because the bus is going to take so damn long to get to where you're going. You can just kind of slowly do your thing. You can even hit a throw up with the scriber just on the window. And I've seen people do that before. One of my friend's brothers was great for that. I used to see his name everywhere, almost like hitting up throw ups with scribes. I always had to show love to that. That's in that time, it would be, at least by us, considered like a respectable place to hit up. But it's still kind of easy because you're not doing anything big motions. You're not making any kind of smell, nothing like that. The only thing is, if anybody knows what that is, if they feel like a hero, they're going to tell the bus driver. You can deny it's you. Most likely thing you'll do is just get the hell off the bus. Personally, my favorite place to tag was something called the panel. And on the old school buses, maybe on the new school ones as well, right above the windows, there are these just panels. Like, I think they're plastic, and advertisements would be up there. And we would take the advertisements off. Sometimes other people who had been there before would take them off, and we would just hit up there. And that's a very prominent place that someone can see your name. It's especially as soon as you get on the bus. That was the first place I was looking. I had a friend, not going to say his name. He was from MBK, ACB. There was this little strip that was right next to the window. It was a panel in of itself. He would hit up there too. And he got known for just hitting that. There was like the back panel that was above the back window of the bus. Hitting up the back window of the bus was kind of a prominent place too. Hitting up the windows with markers, very prominent. You would get props for that. People could see that from the outside. So I've had people tell me, oh, I saw you running, blah, blah, blah. Oh, you hit that back window, you did that. That was always the goal, was I saw you running and you did that. And these prominent areas of the bus just allowed you to be seen all over. A lot of these buses like the 38, buses like the 52, the 29, they go a lot of different places. And you have action at people 5-6 neighborhoods away from you, seeing your work. If it's something like the J Church, that goes downtown. All those trains go downtown. So people, going downtown, going to Soma, going to the TL, they have action at seeing you too. You want to hit those places. We wanted to hit those places. The back panel above the window, the advertisement panels, and the windows themselves. Those were all just kind of the best places to tag. And those were always my objective when I would get on the bus, to hit those places, especially that advertising panel. Like, I got kind of long arms, as you can see. Even when I was smaller, I still had pretty long arms. I've always had kind of a long reach. I could sit in my chair, just sit in my seat on the bus and just hit up real quick and do my thing. Then there was something that was called the walk down. And this was something that you're almost always gonna get caught doing. Like, there's no way to hide it. With some of these other things, if you use markers like SGs, or you use the streakers, which was like paint that you could write with, those things didn't have a smell. And you could just do your thing real quick and just act like you're a regular person on the bus. The bus drivers got pretty hip to knowing who was doing what. And there was a certain fashion that we had at the time where we wear really baggy everything. It was the 90s, so it was baggy styles. But the backpacks would be super tight. And you would just cinch down your backpack. It'd be riding, I don't know, it'd almost be like a tortoise shell on your back. And that thing would not move. That's so if you got a book, if you got to get out of there, your backpack isn't going to be sliding down. It's not going to be bouncing off you. You can run, and we've all had to exit out of the windows. Just get out of there, because the bus driver's talking about they're going to call the police. You don't want to end up doing community service. You don't want any of those things. You got to keep your backpack tight just so you can get up out of there. That almost like just the backpack itself, bus drivers came to know who was tagging just from the backpacks. And They tell you when you get on the bus, don't try no shit on my bus. Okay, for sure. You would end up doing something like a walk down just to show the bus driver you don't care. Like, I'm not tripping off what you're saying. All your threats don't mean nothing to me. I'm gonna do my thing regardless. And a walk down was doing, basically you would walk down the bus and tag on each panel of the ceiling of the bus, and you're going to get seen doing that. It's almost impossible not to. And there was a guy, once again, I'm not going to say any names, there was a guy from FMT that I would see exclusively doing these walk downs, and just, he didn't care. Didn't matter to him, didn't matter what the bus driver was going to do. He was doing walk downs, and that was almost like the most prominent place to hit up on the bus. And in pursuing this lifestyle of a bus hopper, I'm only breaking down just a very, very tiny bit of that experience. I will say, though, there was a lot of danger, where there was more danger than normal for just any kid riding just a bus in the city. You got to remember, kids have gone missing in the city, getting jumped, getting robbed, getting stabbed, getting shot up. Very possible on the bus. People get killed on the bus sometimes. I've seen just fucked up things happen on Muni buses. You're subjecting yourself to those things. The first danger is from other kids. If you're passing through the Mission, maybe you're passing through Chinatown, you're passing through the TL, these are all areas in the 90s where people were gangbanging. And this is especially so in the Mission. We could be passing through anybody's territory. And since there's a bunch of us, we might be mistaken for gang members. So people could just see a collection of 5 to 10 kids, all kind of dressed similar, maybe even similar colors on, and say, there go the enemies right there. Let's press them. People used to take the wires on the 14 Mission, the 49, and pull them down and go gangbang on people on the bus. We're at risk of that because we're a collection of people moving together, doing the same things, dressing the same. We could be mistaken. I remember a bunch of kids hanging out on Cortland and Mission, which was a hangout around that time, having the Sureños come by and start throwing bottles at people. Because they saw people out on the street that they may have just assumed they're Norteños. And these are just little kids, 12, 13, 14-year-old kids getting banged on by people old enough to drive cars. Having that kind of collection of people in one place is dangerous. And it's not even just the gang members you got to worry about. Sometimes you got to worry about other taggers. I've been in a bunch of battles, and I'll talk about battling at another date. I'm going to keep doing these kinds of just San Francisco graffiti in the 90s types of videos, but battling can end up being violent too. And sometimes some battles go on so long, people just start fighting. And sometimes it can be on site, but robbery is especially very prevalent during this time. And you could tag, let's say you're by yourself, you tag and somebody sees you. And like, oh, what's up, homeboy, you tag? And then, hey, let me use your marker real quick, I'm gonna hit up. They put that shit in their bag and they go about their business. They're laughing at you on the way off the bus. I've seen that before. It is what it is. You know, you can get beat up, you can get pocket checked, you can get jacked, all those things, because you feel like you're doing something and somebody else feels like maybe you're not the person to be doing that type of stuff. And they feel like they gotta regulate on you or show you that they're more of that than you are. Things can happen that way. You know, you could just be minding your business and someone can see the crews that you have hit up on your backpack or something like that. They don't like those people. They don't like that guy that tagged on you. That could be your ass. But there was equal danger from the adults. And we used to call them heroes. I've seen heroes start tripping out. Nowadays they'd be called Karens and Kevins and things like that. But that phenomenon isn't new. That was around back in the day as well. And it didn't even have to be tagging. Like, it was very common back in the day to get on the bus with the radio and just play your music. And almost every third time I get on the bus with somebody doing that, somebody would trip. Say, hey, turn that shit down. I don't want to hear that shit. And it was somebody that felt like, it was usually somebody a little bit older, probably 30s, 40s, that felt like these fucking kids are so disrespectful and they're so loud and they're doing all this stuff and I don't want to hear that music, especially. Like, you got to remember, hip hop is not accepted by society at this time. Hip hop is looked at as a passing fad for the early part of the 90s, something that's just a bunch of ignorance, to something that's gangster, deadly, all this other stuff. I feel like after the deaths of Tupac and Biggie, things started moving into a more mainstream level. People started making a lot more money. Hip hop then just becomes part of life. For us living a hip hop lifestyle before that, it was almost looked at as like kind of an affront to society. And it's like, you guys are just disrespectful. You need to grow up, be better kids, be better behaved, all that stuff. People will trip on you for just listening to your music, which is kind of some bullshit to do. If someone's on the bus now and they have their phone and they're just listening to it out loud, I'll think they're an asshole. And then I got to remember, oh yeah, that's right. Used to do the same shit. It's even more so with tagging. You're committing a crime now. And there's people who feel like they're crime stoppers. And the early to mid 90s are a dangerous time with a lot of crime. The crack epidemic especially ratcheted up the violence level of a lot of things. Kids are moving around strapped. Kids are doing all these other things that adults traditionally did. And instead of reaching out to little guys and saying, hey man, you don't gotta do this. Like we had some of those too, where people would reach out to us and just say, hey, if you guys are gonna get down with somebody, take them from the shoulders. Like give us a little advice, give us little bits of game just on the bus and passing, shake everybody's hands, like acknowledge people. We encountered older folks like that too. But a lot of times it was just, instead of people giving us some advice to do something better or say, hey man, you know, you guys don't gotta be out here like this. You guys should be going to school. You should nah, it's not happening. People just trip on you and feel like they're the law. You know, since the cops ain't coming, we gotta trip. That seemed to be the mentality. Used to see the guardian angels rolling around a lot. They would do that. They were a vigilante group. They would do that. But just your average superhero on the bus is your greatest danger. And I've heard of dudes getting beat up by people like that. Like people get clowned like, oh, that 40-year-old white dude fucked you up. If you're a teenager, you got no business fighting an adult. And an adult has even less business fighting you, but it would happen. And people will come grab you. I've been grabbed by a superhero before. I didn't know I could run so damn fast until some superhero dude grabbed me by the back and I had to get out of there. Like my friends are laughing. They're like, oh shit, look at him go. And I made it. I passed. Got away from him. Did not get hemmed up. Didn't get beat up. None of that. Didn't wait for him to call the police on me. Nothing like that happened. I was out. Those superheroes you had to worry about. A lot of those bus drivers, though, some of those guys, especially, I could tell that these are like Irish dudes from the Sunset. Guys that probably themselves used to do stupid shit when they were younger. Used to be out there drinking. Used to be out there fighting. A lot of those dudes went from being fuck-ups to being bus drivers, and they took their job very serious. And if you came on tagging, it was almost taken as disrespect. The same way the superhero dudes would look at it that way, they would trip on you. And they were as much of a danger as anybody else. Some of those guys would go to extra lengths to prove their point, to get their respect, and to make sure you did not tag on their bus. And the next one of these videos I talk about is going to talk about a story involving just that. So thank you guys for checking this out. Like I said, I just wanted to do a little something about the life of a bus hopper. I'm going to do more just about the life of a bus hopper later and just the things you encounter on the buses in the city of San Francisco, which is its own world entirely. But thank you very much for checking this out. And I'll be back at you guys probably the next couple of days with another video just like this. But thank you for watching.